There's an interesting phenomenon that occurs as you work into different states of consciousness. That as you come into each new frequency of vibration or each new level of consciousness, you experience extraordinarily increased amounts of energy. Now, often you can't use this energy because you're not open to use it. And therefore what you experience is a fantastic amount of tension build up. And the feeling I've got to do something, tension created. In the chakra system, that is because you don't have any vehicles for expression in any chakra above your third chakra. And there's too much energy to be expressed that way.
What is third chakra?
I'm going to tell you. Good. Okay. If you can just think now, and this is all, you can use it as a metaphor, you can use it at any level you want, 7 at the top. Muladhara, Svadhisthana, Manipura, Anahata, Vishuddha, Ajna, Sahaswara. You still take energy in through all, like this. But now you've got the survival bit cooled out, and now you're part of a species that reproduces, and you start to experience desire for sexual desire. And so the second chakra is sort of sensual gratification. The gratification of experiencing and feeling and gratifying oneself. Still, I am me separate. Whew, wasn't that good? Now, those first 3 cities include a very primitive type rowboat. And and there are big signs between 3 and 4 saying, turn back here. See? We have what you want back at, the Hilton Inn and the Bunny Club and the... Don't be socially irresponsible. Go no further. Do good. You will feel good if you do good. Third chakra. Or before you go on, eat this. That's a good one. Or have you yet experienced Hidden Valley in southern Wyoming at 2 in the morning? But for some reason or other, some people see through the whole thing of the first 3 chakras. They see the kind of finiteness of the whole trip. They see that it isn't doing it. And they start up the 4th to the 4th chakra. Now, up until through the 3rd chakra, all the energy that can come out of the system only comes out through ego trips, through keeping yourself as separate. I am a finite point in time and space. First, I am protecting that finite time and point of space from you. Second, I'm going to make it with you to gratify this finite time and point in time and space. And the third one, I am going to control and master you because I'm going to enhance my ego by doing that. And since all of the energy, therefore, can only come out in ego manifestations of me, I will do this, I think this, my will, what I want to do. If you try, it's like the huge telephone wires that carry wires from the generating plant. They are step-down transformers and step-down transformers and step-down transformers till you finally get it into the house where you may bring it in 220 or even in 110 voltage, and at that point, that 110 is just about enough for your toaster. And if you try to feed 220, you'll burn out your toaster. Right? Well, that's the vast amounts of energy. They start to go behind the step-down trend. So they try to do it more and more. So you try to make love more and more and more and more. Or you try to collect more and more power, or change the world for good. Use your power. See, you get all this power, and you got to do something about it. You eat and eat and eat until you practically explode, or you begin to see that eating is just going to go on and it's finite. See? Whatever it is. That have been fulfilled. You're a tourist, and it can't happen to you because you're collecting photographs, tapes, and stuff which you're wearing like a coat, but it's not being absorbed because you're holding on to this core identity. And the ability to surrender into a new experience, to become one with it, to merge with it, then the thing happens to you. And be conscious enough to see how it all is at each new stage. When you get to the fourth chakra, the anahata, in the Indian system, if you look at books, old Indian Hindu books, you'll see that the fourth through the seventh chakra is always lit by red beams that come from an om that's up in a corner in a circle like a sun, and beams are coming down to the fourth, fifth, sixth, and seventh chakra, and then there's sort of a line, and then there's a grayish place in which 1, 2, and 3 are. It's the chakra of realizing guts-wise, the brotherhood of man. It's Jung's chakra, really, see, because Jung was a compassionate being, and Jung, see, when you go into Jung's collective unconscious, you begin to see, just as if you go into astrology, you begin to see who you are one level back. You begin to see that you're really an Aries things, or you're really doing Scorpio things. And who you are is somebody behind that, right? Now, the minute you've done that, you have freed yourself from the... You can see yourself as a religion, you can see yourself as a race, you can see yourself as a biological entity, you can see yourself as an electrical chemical thing, you can see yourself as protoplasmic stuff, you can see yourself as energy transmission, you can see it. Now, what they found, the seductive possibility. And there are many yogis who use their yogic powers in order to gain individual power. And there are many people in the Western world who use their siddhis, their powers, their spiritual powers for personal gain. Because the rational mind is a siddhi, it is a power. And you can use the power either to increase your own individual power, or you can use it to increase. The key to that whole business is not my but thy will. That's the key of submitting all of your powers, putting them in service of a process rather than use them. I'll use them. The feeling of separateness anymore. And waves, it's associated with waves of bliss, internal bliss. Waves of feeling. So every time you experience that feeling of unity, then all of the personal time, space, desires, and attachments are no longer relevant at that moment. It's taken care of one way or another, but I don't sit around desiring because I've now identified with a much broader kind of phenomenal field, because then you aren't using the energy. Then there's the one that we most associated with. It's a tremendous pull towards God. It's a tremendous pull towards inner, turning inward and upward. It's Ramakrishna characteristically talked. Most of the Ramakrishna stories are fourth and fifth intertwining. He would go from loving the Divine Mother in all her forms, which is compassion, fourth chakra, to turning inward to go into that which was behind the Divine Mother inside, higher, into merging with one. And sometimes I've told about how he'd say, get me tobacco, and they'd say, but you don't smoke. He'd say, well, I got to want something, or I'm going to leave. I'm going to leave my body. I got to have something to hold me down. I got to have a desire to, or masts in India. These are people who are in the fifth chakra. They're concerned for their body. They're concerned for everything has fallen away. They're still on the journey into oneness, but they are at a stage on the river where all the mail that comes gets sent back saying dead letter office. A letter from London never gets there to the fifth chakra. And Ramana Maharshi, for example, becomes enlightened at 17, and then he goes off to the mountain Arunachala, and he sits in a cave, and kids are throwing rocks and feces and everything at him, and he's just like completely oblivious to it all. And then somebody comes along and they see this very high being, and they carry him to another, because he's in the fifth chakra. In our categorization, we often call these people catatonic schizophrenics. We got to be careful, because some of them are catatonic schizophrenics in the old terms, and some of them are these God intoxicants. But we don't have any discrimination in our system at all. So they're all put in total care institutions, which is a groovy place to keep them while they're doing their work. Then there is the possibility of sixth chakra, which is the ajna. The fifth chakra is right down here in the throat. The sixth chakra is right here between the eyebrows. It's when thine eye becomes single, you will see it all. That's the sixth chakra. It's the point of causal plane. It's the point when you're in the sixth chakra, when you've traveled up that far, you understand and know and are wise about all of the laws of the universe. You see how it all works. You are the Godhead at that point. It's only when you go into the collective, emotional, fun experience, you can do it as a pure exercise in one-pointedness at a much higher level. By Ram, 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 and then you go right out through Ram. You can do it at a third chakra thing to say, look how good I am, I'm singing, love songs to God. Now, who we are in the West is all these levels all at once. Freud describes us as second chakra people. Adler describes us as third chakra people. Jung describes us as fourth chakra people. Teilhard de Chardin, people like that start to describe us in sixth chakra terms. The Egyptians describe us in sixth chakra terms. Most of us are functioning at many of these levels. We have moments of fourth chakra, we have dominant third or dominant second, we have moments of sixth, and our job, as we see it, we are in an evolutionary process of slowly moving up the spine, moving up these chakras, so that more and more of the energy and habits and whole way of life get localized in one chakra rather than another. That is, you do the survival thing. But you notice, except for at the moment of orgasm, the entire method is based on duality. It's based on the idea that I'm separate and you're separate, and we're doing it for our mutual pleasure. But we're still separate beings. Now, what would it mean for fourth chakra people to make love? How would they do it? What would it be about? Who do you make love with? If everybody's the same person, who are you making love with? Does it mean that making love becomes an anachronism? I mean, is it all used up? Don't people make love? Well, the first thing that you've got to see and to try to feel your way into is that the experience, the highest experience you make love in order to reach, is where you live when you were in the fourth chakra. Okay? In other words, if you just drank your fill and then somebody comes along and says, how would you like a nice cold glass of water? The process of drinking the water doesn't do anything to you any longer, because you already are the water. You've done what you need to do. It's already here. So then, if you already are experiencing the goal of what the means was, why would you do the means anymore? The means takes on a new significance at that point. That's where Gandhi says, at the point of the real concept meaning of brahmachari, which is what I am, is not that I am sexually continent. It just means that I can have sex when I can have it in the fourth chakra. But then the question is, why would I have sex? And the answer is, I would have sex in order to reproduce children. Because I wouldn't be having it for gratification, since I already have the gratification I'd be having sex in order to get. See, I used to think about these yogis that would sit up in the mountains all by themselves all day, and I think these poor cats, man, they don't really dig how beautiful it all can be if they make it and have a home and hearth and, you know, the whole scene. Till I began to realize that as individuals, they were experiencing exactly that same thing that everybody was trying to collect all the time. Except they had figured out that the thing they were trying to collect was something they already are, and they learned how to be it, and then they were just sitting being it. Well, now, does that mean that everybody, the minute they get to the fourth chakra, just sits on a mountaintop? And what happens to the world, and what happens to population, and do people produce, why do they, and so on? If you sit down with your beloved, with your partner, with your Shakti, with your Shiva, with the yin and yang of it, and the two of you recognize the place in you where there is only one of you, and simultaneously acknowledge the place where there are two of you, then the act of making love is at the same moment an act of working from within oneself, and simultaneously it's an experience between two people. So when you sit down opposite your partner, cross-legged, and look directly into their eyes, and what you see is a face, and the face looks desirable to you, that's duality. And you look, and your face simultaneously is looking desirable to the other person. I can tell you that. And then you say, yes, and that one too. And then you just keep looking directly into their eyes, and then the face changes again. And then you see somebody that's very repugnant to you. And they see somebody that's very repugnant to them, and you say, yeah, and that one too. And then you see somebody that is childlike. I've told this story before. It may be helpful to see what I'm talking about taking LSD with Ronnie Lang in London. And he's a psychiatrist. And Ronnie and I took LSD, and then Ronnie came over to me, and he looked at me when we got high. He looked at me as if he were an old, wise, kind, good, protective father. And the minute I saw him looking that way, I felt like a defenseless little child, just embraced by his protectiveness. And the minute I had let myself totally into that one, his face changed and he became the most defenseless little child. And when I saw this poor, pathetic, defenseless little child, out of me came this fantastic feeling of protective, old, wise, kind father. And the minute I had just gotten comfortable in that role, I'll take care of you, Ronnie, it's okay, I know what it must be like for you. His face changed again. And he was a fellow adventurer on a great journey. And into my face came the feeling of, wow, we're really journeying together. Did you see what we just did? See? Isn't this an exciting journey? And here we were having an exciting, all silently, all in meme, all in faces and bodies. And on and on and on we went for 4 or 5, 6 hours, just going through role change after role change after role change. And that one too. And that one too. The executioner and the condemned. Son and father, child and mother, teacher and student, guru and chela, lover and beloved. Wow, scary, scary, scary one.